Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor today to be the virtual host of this event. My name is Barbara Sztokfisz and I am Cybersec Program Director. I will navigate you during the whole day introducing the speakers, panel discussions, presentations, and interviews. It is now to officially open this unique first digital-only Cybersec forum, and I give the floor to Izabela Albrycht, Chair of the Kosciuszko Institute and President of the Cybersec Organizing Committee.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the third edition of Cybersec Brussels Leaders Foresight. Unfortunately, the COVID-19 pandemic has recently changed the way we live, work, interact and engage. The medical emergency locking down Europe marks a critical moment in which the digital infrastructure of our civilization is being put to the hardest stress test yet, and when cybersecurity becomes important like never before. In this exceptional moment, it is even more crucial for us to speak up about cyber challenges. And for this reason, Cybersec Brussels 2020 has not been cancelled. Instead, we succeed in gathering virtually here with us today and tomorrow top policy and business leaders from EU, NATO, national ministries, cybersecurity organizations, and the global and European tech industry, as well as experts and civil society. We will address together the key challenges of the rapidly spreading digitization of everything, which is unfolding before our eyes now. Thank you from the bottom of my heart that you decided to engage. Over the recent days, internet-enabled cloud services, e-learning, communication and collaboration platforms have helped our daily life, businesses and decision-making processes to be up and running despite the pandemic. It is all mainly due to the products and services provided by tech companies, among which there are also partners of this conference. Cybersec Brussels Leaders Foresight 2020 main partners are Google, Microsoft, PZU, Samsung. Our partner is Amazon Web Services, and institutional patrons feature European Cybersecurity Organization and Women for Cyber. Ladies and gentlemen, fostering trust-based cooperation of like-minded was always a key aim of Cybersec. It is valid now more than ever and is gaining the momentum which we have not expected to see. A few weeks ago, the European Commission unveiled its strategy for a digital transformation of Europe that has ambition to work for all. But even though digital and technological aspects are very high on the new European Commission and European Parliament agendas, with several policy proposals on the table, the coronavirus outbreak is expected to significantly accelerate the digital transformation. In such circumstances, the security dimension of this rapid transition should receive particular attention of decision makers and tech actors. The Cybersec community is deeply worried about the possible trajectory of expected cyber threats. We all should be aware that among the indirect consequences of the pandemic, we may find our digital infrastructure being targeted while our attention is focused elsewhere. The same is with the spread of disinformation, so-called infodemic. That is why today we are calling all digital actors to strengthen cooperation and speed up the adaptation of all necessary measures to secure the European and world's digital DNA. We, the think tank community, are here to help and hope that in the upcoming days, weeks and months, we will observe the empowerment of scientists and experts in their interactions with policy and decision makers. Failures in addressing emerging global challenges and pandemics have been high on their lists for years and decades, resulted from neglecting the voices of scientific community. We should be clear about that. In other words, key decisions have been falling behind the expert advice. And we cannot let that happen with yet another global challenge that should have been treated more seriously for years. Many countries in the transatlantic sphere still don't have resilient cybersecurity infrastructure, efficient and agile institutions, and emergency plans prepared, not to mention digitally educated leaders able to tackle the most critical and essential threats to digital transformation. There are some great examples of such leaders, and we'll hear some of them speaking today, but we need more of them to be active and heard by others. We need to also enhance digital cooperation across the transatlantic region with Digital Free Seas initiative in the front line. The Kosciuszko Institute, especially ahead of the Tallinn Free Seas Summit, advocates implementation of projects which has already been on the decision makers' table for some time. Digital Free Seas Highway with fiber optics and 5G technology, digital islands, as we call it, so data centers spread across Central Eastern Europe, as well as Free Seas One Ocean transatlantic cable, the concept introduced by Exatel. We will also talk about it in detail tomorrow during the special Cybersec webinar. Cybersec Brussels Leaders Foresight 2020 will feature 4 panel discussions, but also a new format, the EU Digital Policy Foresights, with EU decision makers presenting the most urgent cyber and digital issues, such as the revision of the NIS directive, the European approach towards the common European data spaces, as well as plans of regulation for safe AI. We believe that securing the world's digital DNA can start in Europe with the EU's regulatory power, which might lead to imposing the tech for good approach across the world. An example of that notion is GDPR. The current paradox of modern digital world is that, like never before, there are tech companies that are calling governments and international institutions to adopt more regulations, new policies, new programs to secure digital DNA. And it is great. They should be listened to. But it is also a time for these companies to impose the strongest possible security protections and measures, and keep in mind that they also become visibly targets, so the preventive measures in their own cyber defenses need also increase. The same is with internet platforms, which need to engage to protect us from infodemic. Today's debate matters also because we are in a crucial moment of significant shifts in global soft and hard powers, both driven by modern disruptive technologies. We are now at the moment when we need to build a secure cyber world together. This is where our shared future is now being shaped. And we need to feel more responsible for the new digital world. We need to team up all, like-minded countries, governments, experts, civil societies, and tech companies to make it effective as soon as possible. The fact that the entire Cybersec Brussels 2020 conference is taking place in cyberspace proves that in the digital world there are still no borders and no limits of capacity. The internet is able to connect people across the board, enable cooperation and unrestricted debate on various challenges the world is facing these days, even if it is on lockdown. We need to keep the debate going, and I can promise you that we will not stop highlighting the challenges and chances that emerge from cyberspace. Ladies and gentlemen, Cybersec Brussels Leaders Foresight 2020 is now officially open and on air. One more time, thank you for being with us. Thank you for your support. Please enjoy the discussion, be creative, as we all need it now. And to all of you, please stay at home if you can. Stay healthy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Izabela. Now I would like to introduce Mr. Casper Klynge, Vice President for European Government Affairs from Microsoft.
Hello everyone, my name is Casper Klynge and I'm the Vice President for European Government Affairs in Microsoft. A warm welcome to the European Cybersecurity Forum 2020. I'd hope to see all of you in person at the Microsoft Center in Brussels, but of course we are living in unprecedented times because of the rapid spread of COVID-19. Most of us are at home in the middle of a lockdown, getting used to working at a long distance using internet connections. What is not in lockdown, unfortunately, is the attacks from malign actors and cyber attackers. We've seen an increase in ransomware and phishing and disinformation campaigns over the last couple of weeks under the disguise of the COVID-19 crisis. It's one of the reasons why I'm super grateful to our partner, the Kosciuszko Institute, for their willingness to retain today's important event, but also because they wanted at short notice to transform this into a virtual event. Thank you so much for that. I think it's enormously important. And in the same spirit, I also want to thank all participants for being willing to join us from all parts of the world. I think some of you at strange hours during the day. I think it says a lot about your commitment to the cybersecurity discussions that you are willing and able to do that. So thanks very much. As the Director General of the WHO said a few weeks ago at the Munich Security Conference, we are unfortunately not only in the middle of a pandemic, but also an infodemic because of the spread of disinformation because of the COVID-19 situation. I think it's one of the reasons why today's event is more important than ever before. We'll be discussing defense of cyber attacks, we'll be discussing the economics of cybersecurity, we'll be discussing also diplomatic efforts for trying to mitigate the risk associated with cyber attacks. And when I look across the programs of today with very prominent speakers in different panels, I for one look forward to learning a lot more about how we can work together in a multi-stakeholder environment, because it's so evident that today we cannot do it alone, whether we are governments, whether we work in the private sector, think tanks, civil society. There is really only one way to try and fix the issues of trust in cyberspace and promoting responsible behavior in cyberspace, and that is by working much closer together. And I think today's event is going to be important. Also because one of the first things that are happening these days because of COVID-19 is of course that the private sector, the public sector is increasingly going digital. I think that's fantastic to see how we are able to come together in the middle of crisis, but of course it also increases vulnerabilities at a critical moment in the history of our societies. At Microsoft, we are 100% committed to do our part. We are investing more than $1 billion both at the technical level, but also for strategic political discussions. We are behind the Tech Accord, we are supporting the Paris Call, and of course the Defending Democracy initiative that we have launched. All of that as an attempt to try and support the joint efforts of increasing cybersecurity. Ultimately, this is about trust in our institutions, it's about trust in our products from consumers, from citizens, but in fact, I think it's also about retaining trust in some of the critical institutions that we have developed over the last couple of centuries. So a very important aspect in all of that. I also want to mention that while we are talking in Brussels or linking into Brussels today, of course, important efforts are underway in New York at the UN with the Open-Ended Working Group and soon also with the UNGG, discussing the norms for cybersecurity in cyberspace, sort of the traffic rules that are going to be important, not only because we want to understand what is right and wrong, but also for making actors responsible and hold them to account when they are launching cyber attacks against our societies. I wish that you will have a fantastic discussion, a fantastic conference today. Again, I want to thank our partner, the Kosciuszko Institute, and I want to thank our participants for joining in from across the world. But I also want to thank all of you listening in and participating in the discussions today. We need your voice, and I again look forward to hearing a lot more what is going to happen today. Last but not least, I think my message to all of you is, of course, to stay safe, to follow the instructions and guidelines from authorities around the world. And then hopefully, like me, you will look forward to us being able to conduct this European Cybersecurity Forum next year, being physically together and also celebrating that we have crossed the line and made it into a post-COVID-19 situation. So once again, thanks a lot from my side, and I wish you the very best for the discussions today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Klynge. After very inspiring introductory remarks and before heading to the next format of the conference, I would like to present an important announcement. It is my pleasure today to introduce today our new Cybersec 2020 Program Committee, who will work with us on the most important and strategic topics that we will discuss during the main edition of Cybersec, which is planned to be held in Katowice, Poland on 3rd to 5th November 2020. We have gathered a group of 18 experts who represent 14 different countries. Ladies and gentlemen, these are Martin Achimowicz, Director of NATO Counterintelligence Center of Excellence, the main institutional partner of Cybersec Forum 2019 and 2020. Izabela Albrycht, Chair of the Kosciuszko Institute and President of the Cybersec Organizing Committee. Sorin Dukaru, who is with us from the very beginning. Sorin is Director of the European Satellite Center and former NATO Assistant Secretary General for Emerging Security Challenges. Lise Fur, Director General of the Ethno Association and Board Member of the European Cybersecurity Organization. Melissa Hathaway, also with us from the very beginning. Melissa was cybersecurity advisor in George W. Bush and Barack Obama administrations. She is also non-resident expert of the Kosciuszko Institute. Julian King, former European Commissioner for the Security Union. Kjaran Martin, CEO of the National Cybersecurity Center of the United Kingdom. Antonio Missiroli, NATO Assistant Secretary General for Emerging Security Challenges. Robert Muga, Principal of the SecDev Group and expert in cities and urban processes. Christopher Painter, also supporting us from the very beginning. Chris is former coordinator for cyber issues at the US Department of State and now President of the Global Forum on Cyber Expertise. Jayshree Pandya, founder and CEO of the Risk Group LLC. Jayshree is scientist and expert in emerging technologies and geopolitics of cybersecurity. Luigi Rebuffi, Secretary General of the European Cybersecurity Organization, which is also institutional partner of each subsequent Cybersec Forum. Andrea Rodriguez, Cybersec 2019 Young Leader and Quantum Cybersecurity and Geopolitical Analyst. Rafał Rochoziński, CEO of the SecDev Group and expert and practitioner in cyber warfare. Joanna Świątkowska, Senior Research Fellow of the Kosciuszko Institute, former Cybersec Program Director. Together with Izabela, Joanna is founder of the Cybersec Forum. Jean-Christophe Le Toquin, President of the Cybersecurity and Cybercrime Advisors Network, and also coordinator of the Encryption Europe. Paul Timmers, member of Cybersec Program Committee from the very beginning. Paul is Research Associate at the Oxford University and former Director of the Sustainable and Secure Society Directorate at the DG Connect in the European Commission. And last but not least, Omri Veschler, Cybersec 2019 Young Leader and Senior Researcher at Yuval Neman Workshop for Science, Technology and Security at the Tel Aviv University. I would like to thank you. I know that some of our program committee members are watching us right now, and I'm convinced that having you will allow us to highlight the most pressing cybersecurity challenges which are ahead of us. But now let's come back to the current Cybersec edition, and let's start with the very first format of our conference, the interview with NATO Assistant Secretary General for Emerging Security Challenges, where you could listen to more insights on how the current situation affects the technology policymaking and international relations. I introduce you to Antonio Missiroli, Assistant Secretary General for Emerging Security Challenges, and Izabela Albrycht, who will moderate the interview.
Ladies and gentlemen, yesterday the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called for immediate global ceasefire in all corners of the world. He said that it is a time to put armed conflicts on lockdown and focus together on the true fight of our lives, the COVID-19 pandemic. What was said particularly affects the security realm in which our first panelist works in. I'm now honored to welcome Dr. Antonio Missiroli, who is the NATO Assistant Secretary General for Emerging Security Challenges. Prior to joining NATO, Mr. Missiroli was the director of the European Union Institute for Security Studies. He is a friend of Cybersec and became a member of our Cybersec 2020 program committee. Mr. Missiroli, thank you for being with us during these days. It proves commitment to our Cybersec cause. Before we start our Q&A, I would like to give you a floor, a mic actually, for some opening remarks.
Thank you. Good morning, Izabela, and it's a pleasure to join you all today. These are indeed extraordinary times, illustrated by the fact that this entire conference has gone from the physical world to the digital world. And I would like to congratulate Cybersec on your resilience in these challenging circumstances.
Thank you.
Not in our lifetimes have we experienced anything like this pandemic. And I'm saying this also as an Italian citizen from the north of the country that is being ravaged by the virus. My thoughts are with those who have lost loved ones or who are worried about their safety. And I want to express my admiration to all health workers on the front line in this fight to keep us safe. This is a truly global crisis. It's time for us all to stand as one. And we are, not just the countries of the NATO alliance, but all around the world, because we really are all in this together, as the UN Secretary General underlined yesterday, as you correctly said. This may be one of the greatest tests of our world in this generation. And it is also showing that we should and can overcome our differences and stand united. This is the lessons, incidentally, that we have learned time and again over the past 70 years at NATO. When it matters, we stand together. And we can also grow. Today is the day North Macedonia is set to become officially NATO's 30th member, so that we will be 30 at 70. Despite the impact of the virus, NATO's ability to conduct operations has not been undermined. Our forces remain ready and our work goes on. This includes our multinational battle groups in the east of the alliance, NATO air policing, our maritime deployments, and our missions from Afghanistan to Kosovo. Because in fact, other challenges to our security have not gone away with the virus. NATO's role is to protect our almost 1 billion people. And that is what we are doing, including by having this discussion with you all.
Thank you. So we can proceed with our questions and answers session. So Mr. Missiroli, this is in fact a conference about cybersecurity and emerging technologies, but we meet today in the virtual world due to the biological disruption in our physical realm. This disruption requires reactions and actions in several dimensions made by many actors. COVID-19 has already affected NATO. Recent Defender Europe exercise with NATO states' participation was scaled down. NATO is still operational but needs to adapt to day-to-day business to the new medical emergency to keep fulfilling its mission. And as the world around has suddenly changed, NATO, being also a political organization, should play a role. So what is the NATO's role in the times of pandemic? Should NATO's Article 5 be triggered over COVID-19, so the principle of collective defense, or maybe Article 4 for the consultancy when nations feel its security is threatened. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg yesterday expressed his support to Italy, your country, which is in the front line of COVID-19 fight in Europe. How it will be achieved? How can NATO in the practical way engage in fighting the crisis? And are the NATO states troops going to participate in humanitarian assistance and disaster relief operations? So one big question as for the starter.
Well, tackling COVID-19 is a public health emergency led by national governments and health authorities and guided by the World Health Organization. NATO is doing everything possible to limit the spread of the virus, protect our soldiers and the communities they serve. Just like the rest of society, some of our people have tested positive for the virus and some have been quarantined. Some of our exercises, as you correctly said, have been modified or cancelled. NATO has been working with allies and partners for many years to strengthen their resilience and help them enhance their preparedness across government, including in the health sector. Dealing with the coronavirus is not a NATO operation, but the work we have done with allies and partners to strengthen their militaries, to help them better deal with civil contingencies and natural disaster is having a material impact as more countries employ their armed forces as part of the overall response. In fact, the increasing mobilization of armed forces at the national level in the effort against COVID-19 testifies to the good work that has been done in the previous years. With planning, hard work, ingenuity, and also creativity, essential work can indeed continue, just like this conference indeed. And at NATO headquarters, we have also taken preventative measures based on guidance from the World Health Organization and the Belgian authorities. Those in the office, like me, are screened for fever as they enter the building, and everyone practices social distancing. The vast majority of NATO staff are now teleworking from home. Last week, the Secretary General launched our annual report online with a virtual press conference. And next week, we will hold the foreign ministers meeting as planned with a little help from new technologies. And we are going to discuss a possible set of specific solidarity measures to be launched in support of allies in need that could go from field and ship hospitals to extra generators and respirators that could be put at the disposal of allies if they wish so. That is what we are doing right now in the current crisis.
Thank you. And there is yet another big political challenge in the COVID-19 frontline. How can NATO engage in fighting disinformation, the so-called infodemic? We know now that the spread of fake news and misinformation is now rapidly growing. How does it create and impose new security threats on the transatlantic community?
This is indeed an area in which disinformation or misinformation can take many shapes. And not all the activities, malicious activity in this field, have a sort of geopolitical intent. Just remember what happened already many, many years ago with the so-called anti-vax movement and the kind of confusion and disinformation that is spread across the civilian world in that particular respect. Or think about the numerous criminal activities that are currently going on, in particular when it comes to selling miracle drugs or spreading conspiracy theories. There is also an increased cyber malicious activity related to spear phishing. And of course, there has been recently even a cyber attacks against the World Health Organization itself that is increasingly targeting that field. There is also, of course, a wider campaign in order to spread misleading messaging about the origins and the unfolding of the crisis itself. I would say to everyone to always check the source of your information, not to believe everything you read on social media. Listen to your governments, to the medical experts, and to the World Health Organization itself. There is a hunger for information out there, and it is fully understandable, but it is a hunger for facts and not for rumor or lies. And this is an unprecedented crisis, and we'll have to overcome it, and this requires cooperation across international organizations, across national governments, and also with the private sector that is very often in the front line when it comes to information channels across the world.
Thank you. The role of digital technologies has been changing over the last 2 decades. And now, in times of geopolitical shifts and rivalry, when technology plays a major role in building the soft and hard power of our countries, what is the potential of NATO countries, and how is NATO embracing this digital change and building its technological capabilities to keep this geopolitical position, this NATO geopolitical position? How would it be correlated with European Commission's ambitions to advance the EU digital sovereignty? How we can stay united in cyberspace within the NATO community in that respect?
Well, yes, as you correctly said, in London last December, NATO leaders agreed to develop a common understanding and approach to emerging technologies. Last year, we updated standards for resilient civilian telecommunications, including 5G, and we declared space as an operational domain alongside sea, air, and land, as we did with cyber in 2016. We have recently created here at the headquarters a new innovation board, NATO Innovation Board, which coordinates innovation policy and encourages cooperation across the whole of NATO. And we'll develop an emerging technologies implementation strategy by the end of this year. We are also establishing an external advisory group to ensure we have the best and the brightest minds challenging us every step of the way. Our innovation unit at the NATO headquarters encourages new thinking and experimentation across the alliance. And one example will be to use artificial intelligence to predict and plan maintenance of our OWACS surveillance aircraft, increasing their availability for operations. Individual allies are driving change. For example, the mission of the Pentagon's Joint Artificial Intelligence Center is to scale the use of AI across the Department of Defense and the military. And we are changing the way we work with industry, liaising with technology companies and startups, as well as traditional defense firms. And we are being less prescriptive and more open to risk. We need to institutionalize experimentation so we can fail early and fail small if something doesn't work, but learn quickly and scale fast if it does work. We have the best minds and the most innovative companies in our part of the world. This gives us a huge advantage in the development of new technologies. You asked about the EU and the Digital Sovereignty Initiative. It is important that every ally does their bits on national resilience, training, and education, and capability development as well. As emphasized through summit communiques, it is important to recognize the importance of voluntary norms of responsible state behavior and the application of international law and cyberspace. That said, what the EU does is regulation, and it has a powerful impact on the economic and the civilian sphere. What NATO does is standardization, which has a powerful impact on the military sphere. I think these two tasks are potentially and hopefully complementary, but they are distinct and they have to be considered as such. Although, of course, those members of both organizations should act consistently across the board in order to be able to act and speak with one voice in both fora and worldwide.
Thank you. Cybersecurity is now becoming more important than ever. We all know that. And because of COVID-19, the digitization is speeding up as we all want to keep our family lives, social activities, public services and businesses up and running. We didn't expect that to happen when we conceived the theme of Cybersec 2019, securing the world's digital DNA. How do you see the NATO cyber strategy evolving in the upcoming months, since you mentioned that you are going to plan to have a new approach since more and more critical functions of our states as well as international organizations have been rapidly moving to virtual world? What initiatives and cooperation frameworks in the area of cybersecurity do you think are effective? and should be carried on?
Well, the processing and potentially also the manipulation of vast amounts of data by various forms of artificial intelligence is having already a huge impact on our societies, and must learn and adjust to this, including when it comes to defense proper. But we are not playing catch up. For years, the Alliance has been adapting to these developments through Allied Command Transformation, in particular based in Norfolk in the United States. Over this coming year, as I said earlier on, the Innovation Unit at the NATO headquarters will be laying the policy foundation to enable the Alliance to take full advantage of the opportunities arising from innovative technologies while minimizing the potential risk, and also doing an important work in terms of understanding the potential implication of all these technologies, which is something we are still working on. This environment is changing with breathtaking speed, and it is up to institutions like NATO and the EU working hand in glove together and with governments to ensure we have the policy frameworks to face the future with confidence. NATO cyber defense strategy itself was adopted already a few years ago, and I think there is a demand on the part of allies to review if and as necessary that cyber strategy in light of the events of the past few years, and in particular in light of the new technological developments that are on the horizon. I think that is the work that will keep us busy, I think, in the months to come, with a view probably to deliver a new cyber strategy on the occasion of the next NATO summit that is planned for 2021. So our plate is full, and I think we have focused on the issues that concern us all in this particular respect.
Thank you. And maybe let's now talk about what was in the headlines before the COVID-19, but what is still the major infrastructural project to keep our digital world up and running, so 5G technology. At the London summit in December 2019, NATO allies recognized the need to rely on secure and resilient communication systems and declared their commitment to ensuring their security, including 5G. It is an important topic for us during this conference today. What major threats are arising from the implementation of 5G from the national security perspective, and what can the Alliance do to boost its resilience? How to fully apply civil preparedness to a wide range of sectors, which originally supported, and I quote after NATO official site, the continuity of government and the provision of essential services in nations and civil support to the military.
Well, to secure our deterrence and defense, we need robust, resilient and reliable communication, transport and energy infrastructure. And fifth generation networks are poised to transform our societies, providing enormous opportunities for enhanced interconnectivity for people, public services and the military indeed. This means that 5G will fast become vital, critical national infrastructure, and it has to be secure. At the London summit in December 2019, as you said, leaders endorsed a revision of NATO's baseline requirements for resilient civil communication systems. And NATO encourages allies to integrate security and defense consideration into their national decision-making on 5G, and to mitigate risks so that they can ensure access to critical civilian communication networks, even in the event of compromise or disruption. NATO is working with partners such as Finland, Sweden, and Australia, who are developing their own national approaches to 5G. We are also exchanging information and best practice with the EU, who have developed, among other things, a 5G toolbox with guidance on mitigation. But 5G is only one example of evolving technologies. We also need to be forward-thinking and looking in addressing vulnerabilities in other new technologies, such as quantum computing and artificial intelligence, as already said, which will impact alliance resilience and military operations in ways that are still very hard to predict.
Indeed, all technologies are now on the front line. The Kosciuszko Institute, in the Kosciuszko Institute, we develop and support ideas. One of the most important ones, which we advocate for, is, as you probably know, the Digital 3Cs initiative. And among many areas of collaboration, there are two aspects which, in our opinion, are fundamental for our digital future: digital infrastructure and cybersecurity. Starting with the first one, we support the idea of transatlantic cable 3 seas, 1 ocean, which will not only make the region more secure, but also attract investments in Central Eastern Europe, as well as enable better connectivity in the form of the digital 3 seas highway, which should spread along major routes such as Via Carpathia from north to south in the Central Eastern region. And finally, with digital islands, as we call it, so the data centers, which we lack in the region. And so the question I would like to ask is the following. There are arguments of the past and of the present which constitute the purpose for the 3 seas initiative, the initiative of 12 countries from Central Eastern Europe to cooperate, to work on better connectivity in the region. We all know them. So these arguments from the past is shared history from behind of the Iron Curtain and the need to catch up with EU 15 in terms of connectivity and innovation. But what are the geopolitical arguments related to the importance of the Central Eastern European region for the transatlantic stability, to enhance the cooperation in the region and actually help to strengthen political will of Central Eastern European leaders to commit for supporting strategic projects during the next 3 seas summit? What is the perspective of NATO on Central Eastern Europe and the idea of increasing, enhance the cooperation of the region in the new digital world?
Izabela, we are all increasingly dependent on the internet and other forms of digital connectivity. Hackers, be they criminals, state actors, or even lone individuals, seek out and exploit weaknesses in these networks. If these networks are disabled, then dependency could quickly lead to significant and potential fatal problems, which is why it is essential to improve and enhance the cyber defenses of your national networks and infrastructure as a matter of priority. And of course, as you know all too well, the Cyber Defense Pledge initiative has been vital in providing precisely this kind of framework for all allies over the past couple of years. It is important to realize that it's difficult to go it alone when it comes to tackling cyber threats. Quite simply, you cannot build fences that are high enough to keep cyber threats away. And also you can do a lot more working with others and learning from others. And this is why partnership and cooperation matter. I might add that by cooperating with partners, you can also shape the strategic environment in unprecedented ways. We, of course, welcome regional initiatives among like-minded allies who share similar challenges, similar history, and hopefully a similar and common future in that respect. There is a scope and room for mutual learning and mutual support in this respect. But NATO, of course, is also committed to a 360 degrees approach. And the idea is that every ally is only as strong as the weakest ally in that particular respect. Any initiative that strengthens individual and common capabilities is welcome, is to be supported, and will be supported by the alliance, because that is our common present and our common future.
Thank you very much, Antonio, if I may. I really hope that we will soon see each other in Brussels, and I would like to offer the support of the Cybersec experts and the Kosciuszko Institute in that difficult time, also to help in the expert way the preparation of the cyber defense strategy that you mentioned. I'm looking forward to work with you in our program committee. I hope and I wish that this exceptional situation with pandemic will finish soon. So thank you one more time for joining us. Thank you for those opening and all remarks made. NATO is a very important a partner and actor to tackle this pandemic threat, and so we also like to keep our fingers crossed for NATO to help in fighting the pandemic. Thank you very much one more time.